Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And we are back with our local friend. I say local because I'm from New York. He's in Connecticut. Thomas Bergvik. How you doing today?
All right. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Beautiful spring-like day here in the Northeast, right?
Yeah, it's
Hitting
about
almost
time.
70. I know. Makes you feel good, makes you smile. And for
Absolutely.
the mental health, it does a body good. And for the mental health of others, you do the body good. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, Thomas.
My name is Thomas Bergvik. I go by Tom most of the time. I'm a licensed professional counselor practicing in Connecticut and Hamden specifically. I've been working in private practice for the past 11 years. Will be 11 years, September. Been working towards certification in sex therapy. I specialize working with couples. I also do individual counseling regarding anxiety, depression, anger management. One of the things I haven't mentioned is I also, trauma permeates my work because my feeling is we all get traumatized when we're kids, but we also get traumatized obviously as adults, and it does affect us as we move on in life. So I definitely talk about that during my sessions. Let's see, I go by Bergvik Counseling Services. Don't know what else to tell you other than that. We're going to be talking about today about going through 7-year transitions, which I think is a very interesting topic, because one of the things I've noticed in my practice is that, especially with couples, it seems like they're always in crisis in the 7-year intervals. 7 years, 21 years, 14 years, 21 years, and so forth.
Interesting.
Which I find that absolutely amazing. If you want to know what the percentages are, I haven't really calculated precisely, but I'm guessing based on the responses from my clients, and sometimes individual clients who aren't necessarily ready for couples counseling. They talk about they've been together for 7 years. They've been together, say 13, 14, 15 years. It doesn't have to be exactly the 7 year, but it tends to be around that area where things are often in a turmoil, and they have to determine as to, where they're going in the relationship and what they want out of it.
Ah, interesting. So the 7-year cycle, I've never even heard of that. So this is news to me. Maybe some people have, but what is it about that time frame? Is there like certain transition periods that we go through? Do you want to walk us through the years? In a sense of what is to be expected?
I've got several articles on this. I'll get to the couples issues for
Sure.
a little bit, after I go through what we go through in general. There was an article here about 7-year cycles of human life, and it starts off when we're born, and it continues on as we get older.
Okay.
Go through that. I'm gonna make sure I get okay. Yeah, from birth to 7 years, they say the child knows the world only horizontally and is starting to develop its senses. There's a strong bond with the mother, and the first sensations are the mother's face and voice. Her milk and warmth are as well as the kisses. This period ends when the child starts learning of the outside world. From that point, from the 7 year to 14 years, the child starts connecting to his father and to the vertical world as well. His personality starts developing, and the father becomes the most faithful ally for any knowledge of the outside world. Kind of tells you how important fathers are. From 14 to 21, the revolt against society usually takes place. This is the time when a person forms their intellect and the adolescent crisis begins. It's also the phase where there's a wish to change the world and destroy the existing order, with teenagers resenting society by expressing their revolt with loud music, a tendency towards independence, ties with marginal social groups, anarchist values, and denial of the old values. And for those of us who have obviously been through that, memories of that period are it's sometimes nostalgic, but other times kind of looking back at it, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I even survived that period. You know?
Yeah.
From 21 to 28 years, this is a period of calming down after the uprising in the previous years. After the failure and the desire to change the world, people integrate into society and try to be better than their predecessors. They start looking for a job better than their parents and a more suitable place for a living. At this age, people are trying to create a happier family than their parents, and the period usually ends with marriage. And I want to talk about specifically later on about that period from the early part, because I think we also, I call it sowing your oats, getting an idea of what being adult is all about, getting into relationships and so forth. And sometimes that could backfire if you haven't gone through that period as well. 28 to 35 years, this is a period of nesting in the family and the time when most people buy a house and a car. They usually have children at this point in their life and they begin caring about their family the most. However, if a person didn't complete the first 4 cycles, the family could fall apart. If the relationship with the mother has been strained in the past, there could be a problem with the son or daughter-in-law. If the phenomenon occurred in the relations with the dad, a man might get involved in the internal affairs of another young family and cause conflict. If a person didn't reject society as a teenager, there's a chance that he could do it now, which may spark a divorce or getting fired. 35 to 42 is the period where it all starts from scratch again. After going through the previous crisis, the man learns from his mistakes and begins to rebuild the second cycle. He usually spends more time with family and his parents, while divorced individuals start looking for lovers. The relations with society are also being improved. And there's from 42 to 49 and 49 to 56. And then of course, there's the end of the 4x7 quadrant they talk about. But the overall idea is to let people know that we're all going through 7-year transitions. And if you think about what you've been through, sometimes you realize you're going through it. That midlife crisis that everybody talks about. There was a movie called Middle Age Crazy, and that's with Bruce Dern and Anne Margaret. This is back in around 1980. And it was kind of, I've always remembered that movie because not only because of the crisis that he had gone through, he was looking at younger women, and he was 40 years going, he was looking at towards 40 years of age, and he did get this proverbial sports car. But everybody did a video to celebrate his birthday, and the question was, what does it feel? What does it mean, or what does it feel like getting old? And his father said, "Growing old, it's the shits," quote unquote.
Let's be honest about it. Yeah. Wow.
Right. And from an older person's perspective, especially as you get older, you start to feel, because you feel like your body's breaking down in general. And so, and it's not like it used to be. And so it is not easy for people who are older, especially senior citizens, to move on, to be able to continue living, because the things they enjoyed when they were younger, in many cases, they can't do it anymore.
I know, but mentally they still feel that they can, and their minds are still, most of them still there. And it's got to be hard. I look, my dad's 76 now, and he talks about all the time, my body, my back, I can't move, but I want to go. I want to plant those flowers. I want to go outside and work in the garden. I just can't. It's like mind and then body now. It's like he's like, I'm decrepit. He's like, I'm falling apart. I said, it's so sad, but it's what happens with age, and we're all going to experience that at some point, which is not easy mentally. My goodness.
I talk about, when we're talking about retirement, I think that one of the things that people tend to forget, at least men do, when they think about retiring early, is, okay, what's your purpose? You're no longer working, so who are you? And I'm not being flippant when I say that, because I think we all need a purpose, even if we are retired. We do have a change going on.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I try to say, okay, with women, I think they respond, not all women, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
many women are able to, even if they've been working outside the home, they're able to make that transition to being, if their kids are married and have children, to be the grandmother, the one that's basically watching over the kids when the parents need a break, or just to help with carting the kids back and forth to school, possibly, or just with occasional babysitting.
Yeah.
You are needed. And of course, most people, when they think of the grandmother, they think of the grandmother baking pies and doing things like that. But the bottom line is, whatever the purpose is, if that woman is that something they enjoy doing, then that's their purpose. With men, it's a little bit trickier, because we tend to grow up thinking that our responsibility is keeping a roof over our
Yeah.
house. We bring in the bread. Okay, we're retired.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do now? The conversation, and when we go to parties, is when somebody asks you, say, what do you do for a living? I'm retired. How many times all of a sudden there's a pregnant pause? It's like, where do you go from there? The way I would handle that situation, and I'm going to be retired at some point, is this is what I used to do.
Mm-hmm. But it identifies you too. A lot of people identify themselves with what they do. And once that ends, it's like.
And that's exactly my point. Exactly my point. Yeah.
I learned my little lesson, but you continue and I'll tell you my story in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. Identity is everything. And people tend to identify themselves by what they do for a living. Whatever it is, you practice law, you're an accountant, you're a therapist, you're an engineer, you're a teacher. It's like people have a general idea about many of those occupations, and they also form opinions about you before you even open your mouth. Mm-hmm. Good, bad, or indifferent, they still forming an opinion. And so when you don't have it, when you don't give them anything to work with, where does the conversation go from there? Yeah. Because they see themselves as doing whatever their occupation is. Yeah. So they feel like when you're carrying a conversation with another person, they want to be able to talk about what they do for a living and want to hear what you do. And that's how the conversation starts. When you don't have that, they feel lost and say, okay, what do I do with this? How's the retirement? Because the automatic response is, okay, how do I deal with this? Where does the conversation go? Because people are not retired. They can't identify with that. Unless, like I said, they're imagining, okay, what did you do before you retired? Then we might have a conversation, but a lot of times a lot of people feel lost.
Yeah, well, look, I'm 44, so I'm nowhere near retiring yet. But 5 years ago, I was pregnant with my second kid, and then my mother was dying of lung cancer. I had to move an hour and a half east of Manhattan in New York City, where I was working, and to take care of her. I was on short-term disability because of the pregnancy. I missed so much work. Long story short, my mom passes, and then my job let me go, and I was working television, and I'm like, but I just bought a house, but. Then the truth is, it's a godsend, because who wants to drive and commute from Suffolk County, Long Island to the city for a 9 a.m. job? But you have to leave at 5 a.m. It was like, it was at CBS, and I'm like, what am I? And I cried, and and I was like, what am I? And it took me a few months to realize, oh my gosh, Jill, start living. You've had this career, and you've judged your life and your persona on it. Like, that's what you do. Oh, I work in television. I do this. And I realized so quickly, it means so nothing. And ever since then, I was so in tune to people always talking about themselves. Like if I would meet someone, oh, I do this, I do that. Okay, but who are you really? And it made me start inquiring, who am I really? I'm a fun-loving person. I want to experience the world. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm me. And I used to always identify myself with what I did. And I see a lot of people doing that. And I it's sad because they don't, because once you lose it, you don't have it. Then what? I just hope people are listening can resonate with this and realize that there's so much more to you than your career, to your title. Even on the one of my son's sports teams a few months ago, the guy's like, oh, I'm just a plumber. I'm like, no, like, Ivan, you're amazing. You're not just a plumber. And he shook his shoulders and you could see the body language. I'm like, that's a great job. I said, but that's not, doesn't define you. And here he is telling me he does the Kung Fu Ninja. He does this sport. He does that. I'm like, okay, there you are. That's who you are. But people also then judge you on your career, which is a whole nother issue. And people have their stereotypes about certain people. I hate that. I wish you just meet people, talk to them. Who cares what you do for a living to make money? Like, I just want to know you. I don't want to know that you're a Wall Street banker. A lot of those guys, I'm a banker, I'm a finance guy. And I'm like, that's why I'm not friends with you, because you're very into your career and yourself. Like, not to stereotype all of them out there, but it's something to be said. And there's some honesty and truth in that, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, no matter what somebody does for a living, I feel like I want to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, like you said, a plumber. I mean, look, we need plumbers.
Yeah.
We need electricians.
They're
There's
making
nothing
six
wrong.
figures too. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's
There's nothing wrong with having a trade.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I really truly believe that we're all put here on earth for a reason. And we have skills that need to be, we need to enhance those skills so that we can be able to do whatever society needs us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like people who are in the trades need to take more satisfaction and more pride in what they do, because like I said, we need builders. We need like I've worked, and my clients, they've been all over the lot. I've had a lot of people come in who are landscapers. We need landscapers. And if you've got skills at that, you can really do a lot with that.
Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily need to go to college to make yourself something. Not everybody's college material. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, very true. So I think it's important to open our eyes about learning who you are, live who you are, because life is nothing. You can lose your job tomorrow in your career, or you lose an arm in an accident. You can't do that career. It's just, yeah.
So, anyway, getting back to the topic.
Yep.
So there was an article here called "The 7-Year Itch: A Myth or Reality?" And I was wondering. I said, "Is there such a thing as a 7-year transition?" And this particular article is very interesting because there was a question about whether it's a 7-year thing or it's a 4 to 5 year thing. And one of the things it was really it's somewhat humorous actually. In this paragraph, they said, although people talk about 7 years, divorce rates have historically peaked at around 4 years. Biological anthropologist Helen Fisher argues that this 4-year peak makes sense from an evolutionary perspective.
Huh.
In the course of human evolution, women who changed partners after 4 years together, enough time to co-parent through the early hard years of having a couple of kids, may have an adaptive advantage by engaging in serial pair bonding. They could vary the genetic makeup of their offspring. The timing of today's peaks in divorce rates may reflect the ingrained drive towards the variation. Okay.
Take that.
I'm going to try to, yeah. We're going to have to go, it has to go to voicemail. Anyway, so more recent research suggests that divorce rates rise after marriage and then peak at about 5 years. Rates of divorce then steadily decline as years together increase. This rising and falling pattern is reminiscent of the 7-year itch argument, but occurs slightly earlier than the phrase suggests, the 5-year itch. But even then, there's room for improvement. For instance, when do the 7 or 4 or 5 years begin? Is it when a couple begins dating, or is it when a couple gets married? The minimal research into this specific topic seems to assume the point of marriage, yet couples often cohabitate prior to marriage, co-parent outside of wedlock, or never marry yet are fully committed to each other, which is which is very interesting because one of the things I ask couples when it's like they get married or they're married, say, let's say 5 years. Okay, how long have you been together? And often it's 7 years or thereabouts, or 14 years, you know? So, I mean, it seems to, like I said, roughly, I would say 80-85% minimal where I get couples that tend to fit that criteria. And I can't help but smile when they respond
Yeah.
for that very reason.
Wow. Wow.
So that's, I mean, to me, that says a lot. And so my wife once said that she really is a believer in, sometimes I think starter marriages make sense. Her theory is that the first marriage is, okay, we're going to find out what marriage is all about. And if their partner isn't exactly who they feel is, they're not able to be, they're not compatible, then you learn from your mistakes, you move on to the next person.
Great.
And it's like, okay, I mean, in some ways that makes sense. And it also sort of basically supports the theory about the, going through that 4, 5, or 7 year cycle that, theoretically you hope that when you get married the second time around, you learn from your mistakes.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and we all go through, and again, if you think about it, we change as we get older. What we found attractive when we first met sometimes changes. 7 year, let's call it the 7 year period of time, of the 14. One of the things as mentioned, sometimes we decide to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
That creates a problem or a potential problem because, as one of my professors just before I graduated from grad school said, how many of you are, this is what we were all graduating, right?
Yeah.
How many of you are in a relationship? And roughly 2/3 of us raised our hands. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you, you have a 2/3 chance that you're going to end up breaking up.
Yeah. And they're like, no. Yeah.
And the reason he said that is because we are growing. Our partners may not, which by definition means you're breaking apart. And so it's going to be a rough transition. Now, luckily for us, we have been that, my wife went through that when she became a nurse, and I felt left behind. But eventually we adjusted to that. And then there was the same thing when I got my graduate degree, and I was thinking, maybe you should think about going back to school. And she always said, it's like, I don't need to go back to school. I'm not interested in going back to school. And so we adjusted to that idea. It's like, okay, just because I got my master's degree doesn't mean that she's any less of a person. And she's done a lot with nursing. I mean, she's made a name for herself. The VA, she works in outpatient. And so, she wrote a workbook called Oliver. And it was this character that was based on a number of different people, including my brother. And the veterans loved it. And they couldn't wait till the next week when she wrote her next chapter of the workbook. And the veterans loved it. She loved it. And she really made an impact. She also made an impact when she started a group called Healing Through Humor. And this was based on this whole program was the idea behind it was to help clients be more successful out into the community. Mm-hmm. But it's called the Community Reintegration Program. And so that's what the idea is, sort of like looking at the humorous part of life. And she still does a derivative of that. She'll come in with jokes all the time.
Aww.
And I mean, I'm telling you, she's going to retire next year. And I think it's going to be emotional for me. It's going to be emotional for her. And it's going to be the veterans that are going to be seeing her off. And she's basically right now searching for what she's going to do after retirement.
Oh,
So
wow. That's amazing. That's good. Are
yeah,
you retiring anytime soon?
me,
Yeah.
my goal is I'm thinking about as long as I'm able to do this, I would like to work until at least 78.
All right. I won't ask how many more years that is, but I'm sure it's a while. Okay.
Well, I'll say the 6+.
Okay, good. We're on the theme of sevens today. Just saying. I don't know.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay, cool. Wow. Oh, now is there a part of her that may like feel like she's losing her identity? Like we're talking about, it's got to be a hard transition. But
It
everyone I
is.
talk to, it's hard at first, and then they're like, "Whoa, I wish I was doing this sooner." And my uncle,
Well,
yeah.
she feels conflicted anyway, because on the one hand, I mean, she's got her boss and the VA in general are very lenient when it comes to her taking time off. She's got a bunch of sick time built up anyway, but taking vacations, I mean, if she wants to take a vacation, she gets the notice, and her boss is very, very good about allowing her to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a great gig to have,
To
to be able to
have.
do that,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but it's part of her preparing for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And so what she's looking forward to after retirement is being able to get away more,
Uh-huh.
go on vacations more. We have a timeshare in the Cayman Islands, where we haven't been able to go to for the last 2 years.
Wow.
And so both of us are looking forward to it. And by the way, our 50th anniversary is next year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to celebrating.
So is that your first and only marriage? So I guess her
Yeah.
idea about that is wrong. There's some exceptions for people like you guys, which is amazing.
Well, yeah, and you know what's weird is, like, I don't know, among the people I grew up with, very few
Are still.
actually got divorced. There's some, obviously, but
Right.
my best friend is still married. I told you about my other friend who passed away. He still stayed married to the same person until the rest of their life. And so and one of the things they said in the article, the longer you're married, the less likely you're going to get a divorce.
Wow.
There's an investment there of time.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say it doesn't happen. By the way, midlife / 20 years married, give or take, very critical. And I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
This is my theory. The kids are growing up and they're moving out. Empty nest syndrome. If you haven't nurtured your relationship up until that point, and you have the shock of now the only people that are in the house is the two of you, there's an adjustment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I ever talked about this, but I look at nurturing the relationship like taking care of the garden that you have outside. The garden, what does it do? It gives you flowers, it gives you fruits and vegetables, whatever you want to grow from there. But if you don't take care of it, it's going to die. We all know kids take work. They depend upon us to help them to grow up in a very healthy manner. But it doesn't mean that you sort of ignore the relationship in the process. You need to be able to have adult time together.
Yeah.
One of the things that helps if you have a support system. And that's a challenge for some people. And so it really means being able to have friends around you that you can depend upon. Maybe some kids in a neighborhood that are old enough to babysit, being able to develop relationships with them so you can ask them to come over to babysit, assuming your kids are old enough for a babysitter to watch.
Oh.
And getting away for like once a month at least, to go out for dinner or whatever you want to do, go out to the movies, is very important for the long-term viability of your relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So what's the key? And I got to just tweak you since you're, you work with those relationships. What would you say your key to success of staying in a healthy, happy marriage? Sure, there's been ups and downs, but go ahead. You are an expert.
I think there's three keys to the relationship, and there's obviously subsets to all of them. But more importantly, here they are: communication, trust, the ability to forgive each other. Now, I want to focus on trust and communication because I think that in terms of priority, they're like A and B. I work with people who have had affairs. And one of the things I say to them is, it's not the sex that's the problem. It's the dishonesty. It is much better to talk about whatever you're going through. People go through periods where, especially if you haven't had too much experience with relationships, where you get curious about what it's like to be with somebody. You don't think your partners have gone through the same thoughts and feelings? Talk about it. They don't want to talk about it because they're afraid that their partner may not understand. They may think that they're not enough for them. But you can fill in the blank anywhere you want to. I'm amazed at how many couples don't talk about sex. They talk about everything else, but they won't talk about sex.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, I think it's imperative that couples talk about sex in their relationship. They talk about their fantasies. They talk about how they want to vary the routine in when they make love to each other. Get books out there. There are a lot of books that have been written about how to enhance your sex life. Why not get one and see how it can really spice up your sex life?
Yeah.
People need to be a little bit more open-minded when it comes to that, because having an affair is not going to be constructive in terms of your relationship. It's destructive, because if you're willing to basically be dishonest about that, you're willing to be dishonest about a lot of other things in a relationship, and that will destroy any relationship.
Got it.
And I talk about that. It's like, this is not, romantic relationships, business relationships, you got to be honest there too. You can't do things behind your partner's back. If they know about that, the partnership is done. And we could talk about other relationships. All relationships all work under the same assumption of rules. There need to be rules.
Yeah.
You need to follow those rules. If you break them, then you bear the consequences of that.
Wow. And clearly,
Did I just blow you away with that?
Yeah, it's good, sis. Yeah, you're talking to someone who's never ever been married either. So I'm on a different spectrum, a different scale. Why haven't I been married? Why? What are those issues? But we all have our own issues, and we're not going to talk about me today, but it could be a good thing. It could be juicy, but no, it's kind of boring. But I'm thinking about the relationship 7-year cycle type thing. And yeah, even those that aren't married go through that too. I mean, sometimes not as long though, right?
Well, the thing is, I may have talked about a couple that there was an affair. I don't know if I talked to you. I think I did. So, this couple there was an affair involved, and come to find out, it basically triggered both. The affairs triggered both of them. One felt the female in the relationship had a history of being abused, and she also felt that her needs weren't being noticed. I mean, she needed to be paid attention to, and she didn't feel that she didn't feel her needs were being met. She didn't feel that she was being that she herself was feeling loved. And ironically, her having an affair, which was really more, it was somewhat physical, but for the most part, it was more sharing of pictures. He felt he was triggered because as a child he was abused,
Mm-hmm.
and by his parent, his mother in particular, and that just triggered his feelings of not being lovable. And so it was like it just opened up a lot of things that they weren't even really focused on. Many ways, I thought it was a blessing in disguise, because these issues, would not never have been discussed had this not happened, and also I think they would have ended up getting divorced
Mm-hmm.
because they weren't happy before this whole thing started anyway. But I don't think they knew how to pinpoint that. They had been through counseling before that, but they weren't able to touch about what it was that was making the relationship not as happy as it could have been.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Well, at this time, just want to remind everyone how we can reach out to you. We're still going. Obviously, we have a longer show today, which is great. Another 20 minutes left. Tell us all the ways we can reach out to you, please.
You can call me. My cell phone number is 203-917-7674. My email address is tabergvik@gmail.com. I can be found in Psychology Today. I basically, if you look up Bergvik Counseling Services, you will find another number of ways of being able to find my website, and hopefully it'll address some of the concerns you have, what insurances I take, and I take quite a few. And hopefully, come in. And as I always tell people, it's like any therapy relationship, it's all based on chemistry. And if you feel like we can work together, great. If not, I certainly understand that. And find somebody that you feel more comfortable with. My approach is basically very, as I tell people all the time, I feel like I'm pretty much laid back in my approach. But if I have something to say, I'll tell you. And I feel like it's part of my job in order for me. If I hold back, then I'm not doing my job. If I see an issue that needs to be addressed, I will let you know.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
And the other thing is about therapists, and I was going to say in general, a lot of people are concerned about being judged. And as I tell people all the time, as I start judging people, I'm going to have a steady line of people walking out.
Mm-hmm.
Because first of all, we're not in a position to judge anyone, and it doesn't work therapeutically anyway. So I'm not going to judge you for whatever it is that you're dealing with. So.
Good. Thank you. Non-judgmental. You got to feel comfortable with the person you're talking to, obviously, and that's why you do offer an initial consultation, right? To talk to someone to see if it's a good fit and all that.
Yeah. I mean, we do that. I do that on the phone.
The intake,
before
right?
they come in. Yeah. And we talk about what's going on, and try to give some, general feedback. I don't get into too many specifics because it's better and more effective in the office. But other than that,
good.
Yeah. So.
Do you want to digress to a different topic? Or continue along the path of the
yeah, maybe we should, because being an hour show, it's like I don't want to get stuck in sort of restating what I've already spoken about earlier. Let's see. I talked the last show, I think, about substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I just came up with, so I had a mother coming in about her son who's got an addiction to crystal meth. Now in Connecticut, thank God, it's not to the degree it was as it is, and probably what it has been for a while on the West Coast. I think it's regional. That's my guess. I think they also have an issue with it down Florida. But I can only tell you, people, if you're curious and want to try it, don't. Because this can mean instant addiction. And I'm not just saying this for me. I just read up on this recently because I wanted to know more about it.
Mhm.
It's extremely and highly addictive drug. And there, going through detox is not as effective as it would be for other drugs. In fact, the recommendation is you need to go on a medication to help you get off of it. And then maybe go through treatment after that. So that's the one thing that I didn't talk about last week, that dealing with any kind of an addiction, but whether you're, especially substance abuse, can be very, very difficult for the individual. And this particular person, his personality changes when he's taking the drug. And his poor mother, I mean, he's old enough to, he's not just a young kid either. And this is going to kill you. This drug, or any drugs, eventually is going to kill you. And quite often it's an overdose. You don't make good decisions. Poor choices permeate, especially when you're under the influence. And that goes for alcohol too, for that matter. It's I think a lot of people who have a bright future in front of them, they get addicted, it just destroys those hopes. And so, and it's too bad. I mean, I was hoping that, especially with the topic last week, and I'm just hoping this week, I would like to hear people call in and talk about what they're experiencing, because I'm sure this is something that's not isolated. This is something that a lot of people are going through, one or the other. There's a lot of people that are dealing with not only addiction issues, but also relationship issues. And one of the things, in fact, I had a client that I had seen like 4 years ago. He came in and he's got a problem with alcohol, and he says it's gotten worse since the pandemic started. And we talked about that.
Yeah.
You and I brought up the effects of the pandemic. And the pandemic has done a number on relationships. It's done a number on people individually. I've spoken about how alcohol sales have gone through the roof since the pandemic has started. People being stuck at home is not healthy from a mental health standpoint. When they're doing the jobs at home, yes, you're making money, but when you're stuck at home, there's no variety in your daily day-to-day life. And that's why I think one of the reasons why they're starting to talk about getting people back to the office.
Yeah, which is now happening more and more and more, and hopefully you'll see trends decline when it comes to that. But oh, my heart goes out to people. I've had family members with drugs. I've had friends with drug problems, with addictions, with all. And you always say, well, I don't understand how. And it could just so easily happen to any of us. I guess it really could.
It can, because we are all creatures of habit. We are routine oriented. I could pick anybody on the street and said, okay, tell me about your daily routine. What do you do what is it you do when you get up? What do you do before you go to work? Or when you go to work? They would tell me. Before my ankle surgery, I can tell you what my daily routine was. I get up, I get I get showered, shaved, and everything. I would quite often stop and get some like a breakfast sandwich or something, coffee, and then go to work pretty consistently. I think there's a derivative thereof that a lot of people go through. What do they stop someplace to get coffee? At least coffee. It's one of the things I think a lot of people can say that. Maybe they'll say, well, I'll have coffee in the morning when I get up. Okay, whatever. Everybody has a routine is my point. Not whether you go out to breakfast or not. You have a routine. And when that's disrupted, which the pandemic did, What do you do then?
Yeah.
Now, some people work for it because it made childcare easier. Okay, I get that. But it also can create other issues, even if they are working for you in that respect. One of the things I think is pretty obvious that sometimes can happen, especially with women, is that because they're home, they tend to gain weight. And I could probably say do the same thing with the men, you know, because you're not moving around as much.
Mm-hmm.
You're not exercising as much. And you don't interact with your fellow workers as much. It's more oriented to business versus, having those when you're not in a meeting, you're often just BSing with people. That's healthy
Yeah.
because you can talk to each other about how's things at home, how the kids doing, that sort of thing. And I think we miss that. And I often said, it's like, we're social animals. You can't all of a sudden take that ability to socialize with other people and not have repercussions from that.
Yeah. Well, I'm liking the fact that things are going back to normal. We say normal, but then I just listened to the news and they're talking about a whole nother variant coming
A
in.
whole other variant. And I
So
hope to
I'm
God,
like, really,
yeah.
what is normal? Is it really going to be normal? You just don't know. Or this is our new norm. Kids are going to be back with masks and the whole, I don't know. I don't know. But
And you
it's feeling
couple that,
good.
you couple that with the climate change and meteorites coming and what's going on in the Ukraine and
Oh,
God knows, add it all up, and it's like some kids just like, what's the sense in growing up?
yeah.
They look at it's like, what kind of a future do we have? Because the bottom line is that when we leave this world, we have a legacy, and part of that legacy is, did we leave the world in a better shape or worse shape? If we
Yeah.
left it in worse shape, guess who ends up cleaning that mess up? It's the next generation.
Yeah, it does. It is. Yeah.
And I could hear my kids and grandchildren
Ah,
damning, in particular, my
mhm.
generation for screwing up the world because we left it dirty. And which is kind of ironic because I look at my generation as having so much promise. I mean,
Mhm.
Earth Day was in 1970. I remember being on campus at college
Uh-huh.
celebrating Earth Day.
Yeah.
And here we are, like 52 years later, and things are not so great.
No.
And I mean, I've done my part. I've got an electric car. I know it's a very small thing, but we all got to do the same. We got to do something to make it better.
Mhm.
And I know, I mean, it sounds like I'm going all over the place, but I'm trying to make a point. I mean, it's like we're all under stress for different reasons. You pick the topic. We are stressed out. I have a client who's Ukrainian, and she's stressed out. She has a hard time focusing at work. My marketing person was born in Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And both of them are dealing with worrying about family members. I identify with that because I have a lot of family in Norway. And guess who's on the border of Norway?
Yep.
And so this is not just peculiar to Ukraine. It affects a lot of people, a lot of us, either because not necessarily because of your European descent, but because it's like, what if it were your country? How would you feel?
Mhm.
Wouldn't you feel? I mean, because we all come from somewhere. I mean, whether we were born in another country, or if we're first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever the generation is, we have a connection to that.
Mhm.
It's not, this is no longer us and them. We're all them. They are all us. And so no wonder we're all stressed out.
And the little things that we could be doing each and every day to get into a better mindset. They sound maybe a little simple, but it's those simple things that can get us through, right? Baby steps. I mean,
Yep.
some people meditate, some people like journaling, some people like, I just like being grateful, waking up, take a breath, thank the Lord for everything I have and my children, and try to be more grateful and teach my children patience. And I bring it always back to the littlest things that can make someone, I think, I'm not the expert, but feel good. And in return, if your energy is good for the day, then your wife's going to be in a good mood. It's
Absolutely.
contagious. And the kids are going to school and they go with a positive attitude that's going to emanate and just go to the next kid, you hope. Little acts of kindness
Well, yeah,
go a long way.
I couldn't agree more. I think having a positive attitude can be contagious. Because let's face it, we're lucky. As a
Mhm.
country, we are lucky. We don't have the same concerns as many other countries do, especially, like I said, what's going on in the Ukraine is criminal. I mean, that's putting it mildly. And what other countries have to do, and some countries are wondering when their next meal, how they're going to get their next meal,
Mhm.
or the conditions are just hard to live in. Whatever the case may be, we don't, luckily for us, for the most part, we don't have to worry about that.
Oh,
And so thanking lucky stars for where we are, I think speaks volumes. And be able to, instead of looking at the glass as being half empty, we need to look at it as being half full.
beautifully said. Very simple. Yeah. What other things as an expert, I mean, would you add to it?
Well, from an individual standpoint, I think I think that's one of the things I talk to my clients about, especially if they're feeling down. I said, okay, tell me what is working for you. I'm sure not everything is negative in your life. There are some things that are really positive. And be able to focus on that, because we focus on the negative outcomes are almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that sometimes we tend to forget. I've had people coming in here and they're really very, very scared about what they're doing. They're in a new job, and there may be a teacher or something like that, and they're wondering if they're really competent. And then they tell me what some of the challenges they have.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to them, I said, look, you're doing a good job, whether you realize it or not. Not because I say so, because your colleagues are telling you that.
Yeah.
Let that permeate your life on a daily basis. Because if you can take that home with you, especially if you have with your kids, and you look at the positive things they're accomplishing and focus and really giving them positive feedback for that, that's going to give them self-confidence. This is all about building up self-confidence. And if you think I haven't been there, I've been there. I was the most insecure, shy person you can imagine when I was in high school. And it wasn't until after I got married and settled down a little bit, and I went back to college, and I realized that I could do the work that this is like, because I was really not doing well when I dropped out of college the first time around. I went back, I changed my major, and was like, I went, did a flip went off. The switch went off, and everything just turned around. And the better I was, the better my grades got, the more confidence I had. Mm-hmm. I always felt like I was a second teacher. And it's not just me. We can talk about a lot of people that have had that point in their lives where they said, yeah, I'm good. I'm good at this, whatever that may be. Success breeds success. That's the thing that people need to not focus on what they haven't done well. Focus on what you've done well. If you focus on that, good things will come.
Yeah.
Attitude is everything.
Got to be grateful. And at this time, we are just about out of time. Let me ask you to leave us. It's a beautiful day here in the Northeast, positive. What do you want to leave us for the day, for the weekend, to keep on the positive mental notes, and why we should all try to get to a better mental state?
I
We all
would,
need help. Yep.
yeah. I mean, I know today is a today is a great day, but tomorrow we're back to rain.
Yeah,
But
I know.
here's the thing. From a weather standpoint, you're going to have your good days and bad days.
Mhm.
And I could say the same thing about everybody. You're going to have good days and bad days. But the bottom line is that if you understand that, if you realize that, you look at yourself and say, all right, all right, so I'm having a bad day. Good things are going to change.
Yeah.
This too shall pass.
Beautiful.
It's a biblical saying. It's a wonderful saying. And I think this is the thing. This is the thing that we need to focus on.
Perfect.
Nothing bad stays forever. We will have better times ahead. And I think that's how we should look forward to the future.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And looking forward to chatting with you again soon. Quickly, the website one more time.
It's Bergvik Counseling Services, LLC. And you can find it, like I said, on Psychology Today. Also, you're looking through, you can Google me. You'll find me on a number of different platforms.
Perfect.
You can call me, telephone me at 203-917-7674, 203-917-7674, and tabergvik@gmail.com.
Thank you so
And I look
much.
forward to talking to you guys who call in, and that'll do it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, guys. Reach out to us and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.